Hey, what's up, Art Geeks? How's everybody doing today? I am doing pretty well, and I have something interesting to talk about today for the first time ever. I'm going to help you all out. If you are an artist that is just getting started, or if you're at a point where you're trying to find your own unique voice, if you're trying to find that something that makes your work stand out, I was right there. I was there about 8 years ago where I felt like everything I was doing was just replicating what others were doing. It was nothing that was exciting me. And I was really struggling to figure out how to make that next step, how to just kind of jumpstart something. I wasn't really sure what it was. I was just really frustrated, and I just quit my job actually to be a full-time artist. I worked at architecture firms for about 14 years and just drew and painted in my spare time, but I wanted to become an artist full-time. So about 10 years ago, I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary actually of quitting my job. And so yeah, around then, about 8 to 10 years ago, I was just hunting for a specific style. And I couldn't figure out where I wanted to go. I couldn't figure out what direction I wanted to go. I was following all kinds of great artists on Instagram, and I wanted to talk about that today. And the reason you're watching me paint a broken coffee mug is because it has everything to do with how the entire trajectory of my artwork changed. I actually have the coffee mug right here. Here it is. Actually, it breaks into a bunch of different pieces. There's all kinds of little pieces that break off of this thing, but it is an old mug from my architecture firm that I worked at, and I had this for a long time, but the handle, I don't know if you can tell, but the handle broke clean off right at the seams one morning when I was just desperately trying to figure out something to do that would be interesting. The rest of the mug I broke intentionally, but the handle itself is what broke off on its own. It just gave out. I went to pick it up. It was empty, luckily, and it just broke clean off, and that was the moment. That was the moment that changed everything. And I think this story will help. If you are trying to figure out your artistic voice, I think this story is going to really help you. Now, while I talk about the story, you're going to watch me paint this mug. It's actually a brand new one. I actually have the finished piece right here, but it just on Clairefontaine paper. It was a tutorial over on my Patreon account. If you want to see the full tutorial, creating a very atmospheric still life of a mug, go over to Patreon and check it out. I think you will really get something out of that one. It's a really great tutorial because it helps you just see shapes, and curved shapes are such a difficult thing to get right. You know, the mug, the coffee mug is a cylinder, especially with all these broken pieces out of here. It really turns it into a fun tutorial, I think. Lots of other tutorials on there. I got like 50 tutorials and exercises total. It's growing all the time. I'm trying to do at least 2, 3, 4 every month, along with art downloads. So check all that out. Now, I want to tell you about the story. So what happened about 9-ish, a little over 9, the more I think about it, I think it was like right at 9.5 years ago. I was starting in the morning like usual. I was going to get a cup of coffee, and I went to pick up this mug that I've been using daily for years, and the handle broke clean off. And I was looking at, now if you can imagine the handle being broken off, and I was kind of looking at it and just appreciating the jagged edges from the break, and you know, that juxtaposed with the smooth finish of the ceramic, I thought, that's interesting. There's something there. And I got this idea, the idea that kind of started me down a path. And it wasn't my final path, but it got me started on a path. And I ended up doing a still life series of a bunch of broken objects, like this one. I broke it with a hammer or a wrench. Can't remember what I broke it with, but hammer, wrench. I went to Goodwill and I got a bunch of ceramic things. I got other coffee mugs. I found really anything made out of ceramics, whether it was a doll head, a gravy boat, one of those gravy boats. I found one of those. Anything that was made out of ceramics and I could break and it could create some sort of jagged edge. A teapot, really cool teapot painting. I still have it, but all kinds of really cool stuff. And it turned out to be a really cool series. And I did that series for a good couple of years, but while I was doing it, I ended up doing a series of color studies where I painted this mug 36 times, where if you can imagine, this kind of comes apart into multiple pieces, just like the painting you're seeing right now. I did it in different positions. I positioned them in different ways, and it should be on the screen right now so you can kind of see those 36. But I used it as a way to kind of explore color. And this is where everything started to change. I really started to pay attention to how I was loving how all these color palettes were coming, just they're flowing out of me like crazy. And I thought, wow, I really am having fun with all these different colors. How can I implement color? And I got this idea of, what if there's a color virus? What if color became its own interactive thing, its own entity in a painting? And I was thinking down the road when I'm getting back to my figurative paintings. Now, if this is your first time seeing me on YouTube, check out my previous videos. Almost everything I do is exclusively figurative or painting the human form. This is just a one-off of me going back to doing this mug for a tutorial on Patreon, but it gave me this idea of, how can I make color interact with the subject? How can I make color sort of latch on to the subject and become part of the subject? And all these new ideas about how we evolve and how things are, even with the Broken series, it made me think of how this mug, when I broke it, how it evolved into a more interesting object. And that got me thinking about how all of us are going through life. We go through moments that break us, and how we kind of piece things together and we get through it and we're stronger for it, and all this great ideas of evolution and how our identity's changing. So many different things that were coming together. And while I was doing the still life series, I had a couple shows lined up with the still life series, so I stuck with it for a couple of years before making the switch back to figurative, where I wanted to be. But because I was paying attention, and this is where I really want you to, I really want you to take this little bit of advice that I have, is if you're in a place where you just can't seem to figure out where to go, pay attention. That's the best way to put it. Try to focus your energy on anything you can. It doesn't really matter what it is, but listen and look for those small little indications of things that are telling you where your artwork should go. For me, it had a lot to do with what would speak to me. I found a really big connection with how I've evolved as a person over the last 10 years, 15 years, and how a bunch of events happened that made me want to become a full-time artist. And it was things that are outside of my control, and I really love the idea of how we evolve and how a lot of the things that are happening to us are out of our control. Our identity is probably 90%, probably more than that, out of our control. We're at the mercy of a series of events that have happened to us over our entire lives, and that just really connected with me, because I was in a totally different place in my early 20s to where I am now in my 40s, and just amazed at how I've made all these changes. But it's I look back at all these key moments, like this mug breaking, and it was things that were outside of my control. But if you're an artist and you're trying to become better or trying to find some sort of style, I would say just really try to pay attention. Pay attention to where you're at in as far as your abilities. Pay attention to what you need to work on, but pay attention, especially when you're trying to figure out your style, pay attention to what you connect with. Pay attention to your own specific story. Think about all the things you've been through in your life, and it will lead you down a path to finding your style that works for you the best. And that's all you can really do, is be true to yourself. And I think by finding what connects with you, looking at artists that you connect with, try to look at those artists and ask yourself, why do you connect with their work? What is it about it that you connect with? And I was connecting with a lot of artists that were very similar to the work I do now. I made sure to make my own style, of course, but there's a kind of a subset of artists out there that do abstract portraits. There's hundreds of us out there, but I made sure to find my own story within that little niche. And I think if you can find a way to connect the dots to your story and the kind of art you like and why you like that art, it'll all come around and start connecting. It'll start slowly happening, but it'll give you these ideas. All of a sudden, you'll have an idea that gets you excited, and it'll evolve. It'll evolve with your art as you get better with certain things, as you learn new techniques. It'll all start just clicking together, but you got to pay attention. That is the key thing, is you have to pay attention to all these little things, those little whispers you're hearing in the back of your mind on do this, do that. You got to pay attention. You got to really hone in. And that's, I know it's a vague thing. There's no clear-cut way to do it, but as long as you're working hard, you're thinking about art, you're doing art, but you're also thinking in the future, thinking about what connects with you, all these things, it will really help you find that unique thing that makes your art your own and will help you find an audience for your artwork. Don't make your art, don't try to find the kind of art that you think everybody's gonna love. Yes, there's art like that out there. If you connect with that kind of art, by all means, do that kind of art. But if you can be just as successful as an artist if you find a small little niche of a style, or a style that maybe not everybody's gonna love. Not everybody loves my style. I get a lot of compliments, but those are from the people that really connect with my work. There are some people that come in my studio on an open studio night in my building and they'll walk right out. But the people that connect are the ones that really connect. And that's because I'm listening closely to what I really wanted with my work. And because of that, my work is better for it. And I think that's the way to go about it. So don't try to please everybody. Try to please yourself at first. Will you have to make some compromises with your work? Sure. Everybody has to. Every artist has made some, well, maybe not every artist, but sometimes you have to make little compromises but there are ways to compromise and not lose your artistic vision. So I hope this was helpful. I don't know. It was so funny. I'm not even sure. I was just trying to think of a Patreon tutorial to do, and my mug was sitting, this little mug here was sitting in the windowsill, and I was like, oh, that'd be a good one. Just something different. I've been doing so many portrait tutorials that I thought, oh, this would be fun to do a still life. So hopefully this is helpful, everybody out there. Let me know in the comments if you're struggling. I'd love to, feel free to reach out to me through the comments. If you want some tips or if you have some questions of any kind, I'd love to help. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Who knows what next week's video is going to be about. I jump around a lot. I never know where it's going to go, but thank you all very much for checking out this video. I hope it was helpful, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye.